Hey, Thrand here.
Hey, this is Eldgrim, and this is the Thrand channel. Yo!
Hey, Thrand here, and I'm here with two special blades, both of them from Medieval Shop. This is our Seax from Medieval Shop. It was left out of an order. I got it shipped separate because it was supposed to be a gift specifically for me around you. I got it, I tested it immediately. It cut exceptionally well. This is an extremely heavy blade with a wide back to it. It almost has a single bevel, almost, not quite. Over here we have the Edinburgh Castle Dagger, which performed exceptionally well. It's not designed to be specifically a cutter, but more of a thruster. So in our last video, which was dubbed Daggergeddon by Eldgrim, which basically a dagger one, of course, because I mean that was a dagger test. We had 36 layers of Gambeson, which is something reminiscent of later century. And we have heavy cotton. It's extremely heavy cotton, tightly woven, which yes, they use that later century as well, cottons for Gambesons. And Gambesons technically are mostly just a bunch of layers of cloth or different forms of cloth, sometimes mixing maybe some felt or some braided horsehair or something, what have you, to add a bounce to it. Over human flesh, like ballistic shell, I have no doubt those tests last time would have been different. I mean, we probably would have gotten less thrusting into them because ballistic shell in itself, or human flesh, or the body, has resistance to it. And our bottle, once we punctured it, I mean, it pretty much is going to slide in if it can cut through the cloth at that point, or it's already cut through enough cloth to slide in for it. So, no, the daggers did extremely well. I think it was an accurate test on which ones were easier to thrust through that type of extreme material. Normally, historically, it wouldn't have been over possibly 30 layers. Because you start getting really, really thick, and they have to basically quilt it together, which is extremely difficult with that many layers of tightly woven tough cloth. I mean, hence using huge thimbles and stuff and having a hard time doing it, I guess, by hand back then. Basically, that's what you got. You've got something to make a little more rigidity to it if you do that. And it's not necessarily makes it harder to go through, it just holds it together tightly so it's not so bulky in the bottom. But anyway, what we've got today is we've got 12 layers of cloth. The reason I'm going with that is anywhere from 10 to, I guess, 15 layers is usually considered about medium Gambeson. So with this tough material, 12 layers, this should be equal to medium Gambeson. And what we're basically going to do is have a cutoff instead of a thrust off. Oh yeah, I know it kind of sounds funny, a cutoff. But I'm going to use this blade, which I think is excellent for cutting. I think it's good for thrusting. On a amount of material like this that like an early Viking or Norman warrior might have been wearing for his cloth armor, then yes, I think this blade would be better. It's going to be a bigger, giant wound, and it's going to cut much more easily through something like this. This wasn't designed to cut. It can still thrust through it just as effectively, if not even more, like we proved. But we're going to test and see how well it can cut today, pitted against the Seax. And we'll also experiment and see what cuts work. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the tip shot style cuts that we're used to with the cast float. We've done in other videos going through extreme Gambeson, like 30 layers or more, using a sword. Swords have difficulty thrusting compared to these. The whole thing is strong. The entire blade length is strong because it's short. They're short and stout. So when you go to thrust with the proper body mechanics and the person's not moving away from you, it's easier to get in there with these shorter blades. That's why, hence, half swording, where you see them grabbing the blade on a sword in the middle where the bend is, where it'll actually bend if you thrust. What happens if you have a shorter, stouter blade to thrust with? So that's why they were doing that, to get into those Gambesons and the niches, like under an arm. This could be something under an arm, possibly. 10 layers will fit under an arm. It's not quite comfortable, but you can put that in. So let's go ahead and test it out and get going. We have our famous bottle under here. I'm not going to take it completely off, but everybody's seen our bottle test. I have our Gambeson set up here. I'm going to start off with a cut, just like a draw cut. And this blade's extremely sharp. Let's see what we can pull off. When you're hitting that many fibers and you're hitting all of them, see how this is flat? This makes a difference. I've now tried to cut through so many that even though this is razor sharp, with the bounce and the hit, I didn't even cut through one layer. That's why we're going with 12. It's very difficult to cut the Gambeson. We wouldn't have been able to cut through 36 layers. There's no way. Let's go ahead and try with the Seax. The same thing, and this is just going to be a draw cut, but against this section, like if I was going to crystal midsection with that much Gambeson. Let's see that. And guess what? We got about the same thing. I actually sliced into one layer of fabric. Mind you, that's one layer. So technically these style of cuts, amateurish as they might be in that kind of fight, if I try to just drag it across them and use the blade to push into it, they're not gonna do it. So let's go ahead and crank it up a bit and go with our tip shot so we know it works. Move us at a slight angle here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna be hitting where I hit with the tip. When I come in, I'm gonna use the tip, and I'm gonna try cutting with the tip here with the Gambeson. And I may even do this to give it a little more, give me the ability to cut a little better. Okay, let's see what we got. We've got through most of the layers, but not into the bottom. We did not make it in. Come back with that Seax and see what it does. Let's go ahead and see what happens with the Seax. It has a lot more cutting ability. We've only got 12 layers, which is something more reasonable a lot of times for this type of material, or at least under the arms, or in the arm bins, or what have you. Maybe worn under mail. This is the type of padding that was normally worn under mail. They didn't wear 30 layers under mail. I guess unless they were in tourney tilting or something like that, they were using mail and double mail and stuff. I've heard when they very first started lances and stuff. Maybe clutch lances. They were still using mail. Go ahead and see what happens here. I'm going to step in, give it everything I got. Cut a hair high, but I'd say we went right into our bottle. That's all the way through. We've got it leaking out, and that's a pretty long cut. All right, I figured I'd test it one more time. I don't know if you understand how extreme this is for this size blade, either one of them, to be cutting through that many layers of Gambeson. The 12 that we have here is equivalent to a lot of times 15, depending on the weave and the size. So this is an extreme test for cutting. I didn't even think either one of them would make it through, because obviously we know that the raw cuts don't go through. I sliced through one layer of fabric doing that right there. Just one. That's all I really did. Pushing and pulling. That's all I got. Basically, to cut through this, you'd use a sword. I mean, a tip of a sword cut would do it easily. So I'm going to try one more time just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. I'm going to try using the tip of this and see if we can cut into it. So we made it through. We made it through again. That's a beautiful cut. We made it through 12 layers of this stuff. And that is an extreme cut. You see how far we got in? I can find my cut again. The fabric moves so easily. But anyway, we made it all the way into the bottle and sliced directly into the bottle. Beautiful cut. And one more try just to see if I'm correct on the thrust. I'm not even going to put that much behind it. I'm just going to thrust in with it. Ah! I even cut more fabric as I cut down. You see the size of this wound that I just put in it by slicing and stabbing directly. So this blade would do its job. We're 100% positive. Matter of fact, I would choose this one modernly, the way men modernly dress and arm themselves. This blade would be superior in an eye fight or a combat situation to the earlier blade, in my opinion, just due to the cutting ability, the larger wound. No one's going to have 36 layers of heavy Gambeson that's quite bulky at that. So. That's how deep the cut went through. This time with our lighter Gambeson, this is how deep the actual cut went through. Now what ends up happening is it cuts into the fabric, and as it slices in, it kind of punctures as it's cutting into the target. I don't know how to quite explain it. It's almost like a thrust, but you're swinging the blade or accelerating the blade into a cut that causes the tip cut. You're not actually cutting it with the length of the blade. Only extremely curved blades that I've noticed that are heavy and two-handed have a chance of slicing that way, and you have to step in awfully close, like the katana or some kind of cinchar or some saber or something might be able to cut up close like that. Generally, our straight blades don't seem to cut that way. And our thrust that I just did, it was the width of the blade, and when I pulled, I cut straight down through more fabric. So I'm sorry, if this blade is that sharp, we know we're not dealing with a dull blade if I can actually slice through more of this many layers, as you can see, because I'm already in, I'm slicing down even further. So no, this is a good blade. Modernly, this is the blade I would want, seriously. Okay, anyway. For viscosity, it's still leaking, but let's see what would have happened if we pitted this type of blade with less Gambeson earlier period with thrusting competition. Let's see what it would have done against something like this. Oh! Whoa! We've gone clean through into our bottom. And we have a large wound and it went all the way through. So this tells me right there that if we had used different material to test on, let's say if we had used less layers, this one would have went through just as easily without the extreme 36 layers, and it would have been our winner. So the Seax would have won if it could have made it through deeper. Because of the large blade, this is ridiculously, I mean, it's devastating. And it's a good cutter. So it's no wonder earlier century why blades like this, I mean, and this is very similar when you have a broader blade like this. I mean, it's very similar to something the Romans would use, like a gladius, or some of the early broader leaf-shaped swords that were used for thrusting as well as cutting. The idea is you have the cutting ability if you're able to cut. You can lob arms off or what have you if the person's unprotected, but you also have a big wound. The bigger the wound, the better. Like our friend Roland Morzeka would have said, why make big old broad blades? Early century, they caused bigger wounds. They were better for cutting, caused bigger wounds. Why not? When they were unable to penetrate plate armor later century, and people could produce cloth faster, or get it, I guess actually made it more affordable, and they could make big old thick heavy Gambesons and such, and they developed it into almost a technology of what types of threads to use and how tightly to weave them. And it's almost like making a ballistic vest. They put so much work into it, the linen guilds later century, that then you needed the stiletto shape or the tapered shape you see in later century swords to actually make it through that many layers of Gambeson if they were wearing something so heavy, let's say on their chest or their back, or an arming doublet, Akaton, arming jacket. I mean, they even had jacket plates that had plates you might be trying to get in between, you know? So what I'm saying is, yes, I think this would have been our winner if we were going with a light or medium Gambeson. This would truly have won the competition due to the wooden size. But with a heavier Gambeson, it takes a specific blade to make it through properly. That's all. So no one was trying to say anything bad about any of the blades or that any of the blades failed. We were just stating that they were made for different things. So this one has a better cutting ability and a bigger wound if you can make it in. I think others have a smaller wound but can make it through much tougher material and aren't designed to cut, so they probably wouldn't need to. The materials they'd be going through, it wouldn't be possible with either blade. So I hope you enjoyed our little episode and came back and a reply to our viewers who might have got a little upset thinking that the Seax wasn't as good or something, but we were trying to say that when we weren't saying that at all. We were saying it was designed for a specific purpose. This is also a utility blade. It's good for skinning, hunting, woodworking, chopping small trees down, what have you. I mean, you could use this for almost anything. That was one of the things about the broken back Seax. We're pretty sure this was done for a weapon design, because normally they were more curved at the back, or knife shape, much more like a long butcher knife. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the episode. This is just something I came back to reply to everybody to get something out. So talk to y'all later, and farewell.